last night, all over social media, at least like the accounts I follow, because I'm like a sports media nerd, people were freaking out about the ESPN pregame show. Now, there was a moment in the show early on where Stephen A. Smith is going back and forth or Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins are going back and forth, right? And it's something, honestly, I live in this world and I am not a sports snob. I like entertainment. I think Stephen A. Smith is Howard Cosell, except for he's not drunk. I love Stephen A. Smith. He is a compelling figure. He is a former beat writer. He is a former columnist. He is very talented, and he is sourced up. Is he loud? Yeah. Is he bombastic? Yeah. Can he be a lot sometimes? Yeah. But I like him, and he's entertaining. Now, maybe that's because he's been in my life, really, since I'm 16, right? Reading the Philadelphia Inquirer, trying to figure out what's going on with Allen Iverson. Like, that's Stephen A. Smith is my guy. Like, I came up with Stephen A. So I have a maybe a different kind of respect for him than other folks do. I think a lot of people have no idea how much Stephen A. Smith knows about the NBA and sports and how hard he's worked. People don't like to, I don't know. There's just an absence of respect, I think. But all that aside, Stephen A. is on every morning screaming and yelling with Kendrick Perkins. And so they have a real established camaraderie. And that's on display again last night. And Stephen A. decides to just rip Kendrick Perkins apart, call him annoying because Perkins keeps saying that Oklahoma City is going to be ready. They want the smoke. And Stephen A.'s like, dude, you don't know that they want the smoke. Or maybe they won't be ready for a Game 7. We've seen players wilt under the pressure of a Game 7. But he's like really, really giving him a hard time. And to the point where Bob Myers can't get a word in edgewise. And Bob Myers is like, hey, like Stephen A., just because you yell it doesn't make it true. And it was actually, I thought, kind of a funny moment. I thought it was great because Kendrick Perkins, you could tell he doesn't react. He doesn't get so pissed. I think Perk, some of the stuff he says is nonsense, but I do think he's really talented. I think he's like a really good figure on television. And his reputation and his experience speaks for itself, right? But there were a couple other things I had about this. Okay. So this pregame show, it's been like last night, people were losing their mind, and everybody like polished sports writers, esteemable sports writers are weighing in on this, just crushing the show, right? It's not, no need to bring them in, but I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, do we have to be so provincial? Do we have to look at it's sports entertainment, right? Like, I think back to like, if Twitter had a voice, like I would have hated to see what they would have said about Jimmy the Greek, right? Jane Kennedy, right, was one of the first minority women on sports television every afternoon or every Sunday alongside Brent Musburger when Phyllis George left for a little bit. But like, could you imagine like the heat she would have taken on Twitter? Phyllis George as well. Musburger for stealing, he was notorious for stealing stories from play-by-play and color analysts who were doing games on site. He would steal them for the show when he would hear them talking about it off camera. And he would kind of make the news his own. He would break the story. He'd be like, hey, Tom Brookshire and Pat Summerall. Wow, we heard Joe Pisarcik is pulled up with a bad ankle. What do you think? And they would be like, dude, that was our news to break. Now we got like no big story. So all this stuff, guys making it about them, people making it about them, that is as old as time, right? It's as old as the pregame shows that have been out there. So Jimmy the Greek was an egomaniac, and it was all about him. Frank Gifford wouldn't allow Monday Night Football to start unless it was his voice and face that everybody saw first. We could go on and on and on. I just talked about Musburger. It's always, these are personalities. These people have egos. It's always going to be about them. Could we have a little more information on the pregame show? For sure. And I think sometimes the guys, even like the talent themselves, get a little wrapped up into what they do every day on First Take. And they forget that this is not the First Take crowd, right? There are people watching that Game 7 last night that have no clue who any of those guys are. And when they watch and they see that yelling, they're kind of like, whoa, what in the world, right? And then basketball junkies, they want to get a little more information, right? They don't want to hear a debate show, right? They want more information that will get them, and even like gamblers, right? As old as time, like what's going on? Like show me Halliburton on the floor warming up, whatever. And they did that stuff too. One more thing I want to say in defense of this show is that, you have no idea how loud it was in there. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. But it's like ridiculously loud. And to do a show in that environment, I mean, I used to do a pregame show from Time Warner Cable Arena in Charlotte before Bobcats games or before Hornets games. It was like an online show, a virtual show, but I would do it in arena like 30 minutes before the game. And I'm telling you, it will be hard for me to hear in that podunk environment. I can't even imagine what those guys are dealing with and what Malik Andrews is dealing with. But the good news is if you're losing your mind about it, it's over, right? The TNT show is coming. I'm sure there will be some kind of thread and remnants of those shows and those personalities. But for a long time, ESPN has been, and I love ESPN. I work for ESPN. Like they have been trying to find the magic sauce. And we've seen so many different, think about all the different lineups, right? I mean, even the hosts over the past like 5 years, Rachel Nichols, Maria Taylor, Michelle Beadle, Malika Andrews, I think all have done tremendous jobs, right? But there's just so much turnover, the talent, right? Paul Pierce. Now we're on to Bob Myers, right? Where's Jason Williams? Well, he's not on the pregame show, but he's on First Take. Now we got Perk. It's all good. I think Bob Myers is amazing. But there's just, it leaves a little bit to be desired. And I think that at the end of the day, the main thing that I come away with when looking at this pregame show is that society has changed, right? And we're just not as ready to camp out for a pregame show as we were when I was a kid. And so it's so hard to get that formula down. And that amazing formula that TNT has is 1 in a million. And I think like there's a radical acceptance that as viewers, we kind of all have to just take like, man, that show is actually that good. This show isn't bad. That show is amazing. And I think that is a huge part of it.